So what was your main takeaway from your interviews, and how can you compare to what we learned in class?
All right, the first thing I learned was how managers deal with conflict differently.
Mm-hmm.
See, I work at Brahms, and I interviewed two different managers that work at Brahms, and the answer they gave me were differently. It's like, which surprised me, because like at the same job, you would think they would have like similar ways of dealing with things, but I learned that even different managers deal with conflict in different ways. One of my managers told me like he would, like if it was conflict between two different employees, he would break the employees up, and then another one said they would like do mediation and like get the employees together. So it was weird how like they would deal with problems differently. And then like my hiring manager, the questions she would ask, she would tell me, she would ask questions about like where they're from and where they live at and how they grew up, and it gave her a good indication of like the employee they would become, which was also different to me, because I would think he would ask more about the job, like why would you want this job, that job, this job, that job, or whatever. So that's something else I learned. And as my manager, she always loves to give tasks and problems and all this extra stuff. So a lot of the problems that she would usually do herself, because she's a manager, she delegates the employees into her assistant managers, and they give it to us. And like, so we try to do stuff like building as a team wise, instead of her doing all the work. So usually I hardly even see her. She's always behind the scenes, and most of the stuff we actually do ourselves.
Okay, so how would you take what you learned from your interviews and use it in your future day-to-day life, or even in your work life in the future? Like if you were to become a manager, how would you take that and turn it into your day-to-day life?
So I gotta realize, like when you're building a team, like when I was a lot younger, I thought money was very important, the most important, of course. You know, we're kids, we want this and that and everything else. And you realize money isn't what we want most as an employee. Of course, it's essential to paying bills, but we want to be valued more than we want money. And you realize that if you like go to a crappy job, or if you ever have a bad job, I know most people have, you realize you mostly value being valued and being in a place where you actually want to go to work instead of just a paycheck. Because money is everywhere, and it's not not everything.
So are you saying that that's how you would want to be as a manager? Is that's how you want your employees to feel as you as a manager?
Yeah, I want to build like a little family where we care for each other and we value each other more than just the money itself. I don't want my employees just to come for a paycheck. I want them to feel like they're actually valued and they're working towards the company's goal.
Okay. So what was your main takeaway from your interview?
My main takeaway was learning from my boss, like how her everyday is, like the process that she go through to make me become a better leader. Learning from how she handled things, like she said she managed the team by their strengths and weaknesses to make a stronger and better team, which can help me out in the long run when I open my own company, like how to put people wherever they need to be, like wherever they're better at, like, and whatever I can do to make my company stronger. Learning from how she says she meets up with her team, like seeing like how their day going, like what's wrong with them, like is everything all right, like talking, you know, staying active. Also the different structures of management.
Okay. So how are you going to use what you learned in your interview in the future?
How I'm gonna use it in the future?
In personal life, or even in the workplace?
How I use that in the future is the take it from her how she says it's okay to goof around, but make sure you get the job done at the end of the day, because that's the most important thing. Make sure I have good emotion intelligence, like we learned about in class. That will help me out too as well, because if it's going to be people to bring other members down, they got to go. Like, I want to stay moving forward, staying positive, have a good environment around the people, good cultural diversity to help my company as a whole.
Well, that's part of understanding your employees. Once you kind of get to know the specific employee, it's a little bit easier for you to understand their strengths and weaknesses. So in the beginning, you kind of give them a general a general training, and then once you get to know them a little bit, because every new person is going to be a little bit shy, it'll take a little bit to get them out of their shell. Once you kind of start cracking them out of their shell, you can see who they are. Maybe, this one might learn a little bit better by you showing them something. This one might learn a little bit better than, if you just tell them how to do it and you let them do it themselves. Every person is literally different. I don't have one employee that learns the same way as another employee. Same thing with my managers. I gotta try and figure out how to tell each one of my managers everything, because they're all different. They all understand things in different ways. And how I do that is I spend time with them. I ask my employees how they are. How's their day going? How's work treating you? Ask a lot of my employees that, make sure they're still happy, make sure, if you don't talk to them, you're never gonna know.
Takeaways I got from my interviews was the managerial perspective when it comes to the employees and how you can connect with them. My buddy Aaron, he worked for a tire shop in Miami, so that's kind of a really different environment. It's definitely hard to find diverse employees. He only was able to get kids from high school to work, part-time, not that much. So the diversification was difficult for him, and that really kind of opened my eyes to how difficult it can be from a managerial point of view. Because when you have that difficulty of finding such a different diversification, it really makes you think broader and look deeper into where you would go to a different environment where you can get these different diversification, and it makes you just look harder to get a better employee base. And one thing that I really learned from him, from a managerial point of view as well, is a good way to keep a positive morale within your employee base, because he would describe how they would have a kind of point system within the employee base. If an employee did good or worked a certain amount of hours, it's kind of an incentive system, and they would reward them over the summer. So, that was kind of a good thing there. And versus in class, one thing that I really found of interest was the point of being able to connect emotionally with your customers, because if you do that, then I think you can really understand what the consumer would want from your company and how you can present your products and merchandise to the customers, so that way you guys can connect and you can sell your product and overall achieve success within that.
Okay. So how would you use that in your future?
Well, for me, my major is political science, and with that being said, you have to really deal with the public on a daily basis entirely, and appeal to your constituents' needs. And for me, after taking this course and going through these interviews and kind of being able to understand from that leadership role, that managerial point of view, is really allowed for me to understand the depth of how important it is to understand what your constituents want. And I think that's really going to help me out in the long run, especially if I run a campaign. I'll be able to go and deal with the public and allow myself to connect with them better.
Yes, so my dad, when we first started out, with it being a family-owned business, we just kind of ran a business. We didn't really have any benefits for working there. After a while, my dad realized, I got to start giving back to our employees a little bit. So we actually started taking them on vacations. Anytime that they need help with anything, they'll get a small bonus or a pay advance. With it being a small family business, we can do that kind of stuff because it's flexible. We want our employees to be happy and want to come to work every day and feel like that their job is worthwhile. And that's how we do that, by actually treating them like someone in the family.
So what was your main takeaways from your interview, and how can you compare it with the class?
Well, the main takeaways I got from one of my main interviews which was from a Buckle manager, was that you're always going to be around people, especially in the field that we're in, which is retail. And so being able to lead other people into being able to like that and be able to be a social person, because not everybody is, and being able to mentor them and be able to basically create that environment that everybody's going to be comfortable to be able to do that. So in comparison to the class, like, you have to create a culture, is one thing I took away from it, because Buckle is one of those retailers that you don't really see as a corporation. They actually see it as each store is different. The manager has the freedom to do what they want when it comes to the merchandise and when it comes to how they have their culture of the store. It's not all as a big corporation. That's kind of what they do as a big family. And so whenever you actually see something like that, that's one thing that I took away from it, was because I actually want to be that kind of leader whenever I graduate. I want to be that kind of manager who can say, I'm an effective leader to my employees. I'm the kind of person who can inspire them and motivate them to be who they want to be in the future and just be the better person.
So how do you plan on that helping you in the future with your career?
So I'm going to take what he said as when he was talking about how his team is motivated and inspired. I actually want to be able to create that in a way that he did, and the way that he said that he did was he gets to know his employees. And that's one thing that I think is very important, because working in retail myself, my manager does that exact same thing with his employees. Whenever you get to know your employees and you build that relationship with them, that makes them want to work for you, and that makes them want to work harder for you, and you get inspired to actually be able to work for that company. And to be able to do that, that's an effective leader in my book. And being able to have this interview with Buckle manager, I got to see it from his side. I got to see it as an effective leader telling me how he does it. And so that's one thing I think I can take away from my future, is being able to be that effective leader in a way that he said he is.
Honestly, it's really finding out, like, I believe all of us have something underneath that drives us, whether it be internal or a situation that we've gone through in life. And so my job is to figure out what that is and then relate that to Buckle. For instance, if there's someone on the team that is driven by like getting to spend time with their family, or driven by doing things outside of work, and be like, cool, well, let's talk about like what you like about that. What activities do you like? Oh, I love Frisbee. Okay, like what weekend in July do you want to take so you can go play Frisbee with your friends? I think if you keep your employees happy, they'll want to work for you.